And now I'm just going to push through the toes as I open up through that transition. Now if you can do false grip chin-ups, if you can do the transition, and you can do dips, then you have all the components individually to do the ring strict muscle up. The next thing I'd work on is eccentrics. So from the top of that dip position, coming down to your bottom of your dip, coming into your false grip as you go through your transition, and then lowering all the way down. And once you have that, you need to start thinking about the concentric. You can do TikToks or partial range, where you'd come down a little bit, go towards the transition, come back out. So you're just playing with certain areas or certain ranges of the muscle up. But we want to have a drill that takes us from the floor all the way through the concentric and up with a little bit of assistance if we can't quite do the full muscle up yet. So today I'm going to take you through 4 assisted or foot assisted drills for the ring muscle up, starting with the easiest one and progressively making them harder. Now these drills are also really good if you don't have your rings hanging very high. Ideally we'd have a nice setup where we can hang the rings super high and I can stand and hang without my feet touching the floor. But most people's setup, especially if they're training at home, is they're off something like this where you can't actually have the rings at a full height. These drills using the floor are really useful. The easiest variation is more of a squat technique. So I'm going to have my feet directly underneath the rings. I'm going to make sure I get into a false grip before I go down. I'm now going to go down like a sissy squat position. So I'm going to bend the knees, staying underneath the rings. I'm keeping that false grip. Now at the bottom position, I'm going to turn the rings out. So I'm hanging underneath the rings. I'm trying to keep the rings dead straight or hanging directly down underneath the straps. And then as I pull up, I'm opening the chest until the chest touches the hands. Then I'm going to start the transition, go through to the bottom of the dip, and then if I have it, I can push up or jump up into the dip, slowly back down till tippy toes touch, bring the hands round in line or in contact with the chest the whole time into that false grip, chest still facing up, come all the way down, turn the hands out. Now that one from a strength point of view is pretty easy because I'm keeping a lot of weight in the legs and putting less weight in the hands. But because there is less weight in the hands, there's probably more likelihood for error or gaps. So what I need to make sure is that as I come in up, I come all the way up and my chest touches, and then I transition around and keep contact with the rings as I come round into that bottom of the dip position before I push up. The errors you'll see is things like this. So I'm too far away from the rings, or I start to make the transition too early. So you have to wait until the chest touches the hands before I make the transition through to the bottom of the dip. Now the next one is slightly harder and probably my favorite in terms of the variations of the foot assist. So exactly the same setup in terms of the hand position, but this time I'm going to turn the toes over and I'm going to go into a kneeling position. So directly underneath the rings again, but this time I lean backwards into the false grip, making sure that you still have that strong false grip, arms dead straight. And now I'm just going to push through the toes as I open up through that transition, bottom of the dip, pull back out. Same thing on the way down, try and lay the toes down through the transition, back down again. Now you'll find this much harder than the one before we done, the squat variation, because I can't put as much weight into my feet. The same rules as before, just watch that you're going straight up, make sure the rings are staying directly underneath the straps and they're not being pulled around forwards or backwards. And with these variations, if we crop the video so you couldn't see the floor, it should look like you're doing the real thing. Now this third one's very similar to the second one, apart from I'm now going to use a box. Now you really need to have a little bit more height. I'm pushing it with this bar, it could ideally be even higher than this. So it's exactly the same in terms of being on the toes, but now I can drop the knees below the height of the toes. So now I can be down here. That's not right. So now I can come all the way down here and then I can pull up from there again. See, this setup's not great. A big good thing with the muscle ups, don't have the rings or these straps, these metal buckles facing inwards, because you'll cut your arms on the side there. So don't do what I just done. But you get the idea. You could use this box, go over the edge, go all the way down to your passive hang. By ideally you'll have that extra clearance. Now the last variation, we need to have the rings a little bit lower. With this one, I'm going to sit in an L-sit position on the floor. So I'm just going to push my heels into the floor as I come up, so I'm just leaving a little bit of weight there. So that's definitely the hardest variation. In some ways, that's as hard as the real thing. You can play around with sliding the feet back and forth, and you'll notice on the eccentric when I come down, I actually did pull the rings this way, which is not ideal. But it's more about the concentric, just making sure that they stay underneath the ring and the ring stays underneath the strap. And then once they're feeling nice and comfortable and strong, you can do your slow controlled eccentric. You're ready to start playing with the attempts of the muscle up. Now, if you take the rings up around head height, you can still use the floor a little bit to help you. You could even do a little bit of a jump, just a little bit, to get you through that sticking point. But notice now I can't get my chest to the rings, so I'm gonna have to use momentum and strength to get there. And think of it as one movement. You're just gonna snake through that path. Now I do have a full strict ring muscle up tutorial. I'll link that up here somewhere. But let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. Speak to you next time. Thanks, guys.